So I'd like to take a little bit of a different approach with the mayor's report this evening. During our recent council committee meetings, there has been a significant amount of discussion around this table about North Cowichan's plans regarding climate change, including both for mitigation and adaptation. We've also received a great deal of public input on these topics, particularly related to the Zero Carbon Step Code and our climate change adaptation strategy. For the benefit of the new members of council and also for members of the public, I wanted to provide a bit of background on our initiatives related to climate change and why we are pursuing them. I'd like to start with the Climate Action and Energy Plan. North Cowichan first adopted such a plan in 2013. It inventoried the community's existing energy use and greenhouse gas emissions and identified future trends in energy and GHG emissions. It also identified opportunities to reduce energy consumption and emissions through policy and other municipal mechanisms by 80% by 2050. This initial climate action energy plan was developed with over 400 residents participating through a variety of in-person and online engagement tools. Between 2020 and 2022, North Cowichan updated the climate action and energy plan based on new statistical modeling, data analysis, research, and community and stakeholder inputs. The updated Climate Action Energy Plan outlines almost 40 actions grouped under 7 categories to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050, maintaining that initial target from the original 2013 plan. These included achieving energy efficiency and emission reductions by creating compact, complete communities, efficient buildings, including decreasing potential emissions of new buildings, moving to low carbon transportation through increased use of public transit, more active transportation, increasing renewable local energy generation and procuring more renewable energy, more efficient water usage and waste disposal, and low carbon industry, agriculture, and forestry. Our updated Climate Action Energy Plan is based on the scientific findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's most recent assessment report, which provides a summary of thousands of scientists' recent climate change studies. The report confirms that greenhouse gas emissions emitted from both human use of fossil fuels are causing unprecedented changes to climate and weather on global and regional scales. In addition, the report confirms that limiting GHG emissions, especially carbon dioxide and methane, and reaching at least net zero emissions will limit global heating and changes to climate. Our climate plan is also based on the direction set at the senior levels of government. In 2007, the province adopted the Climate Change Accountability Act with an expectation that municipalities would reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. The reduction targets under this provincial legislation were at least 40% by below 2007 levels by 2030, 60% by 2040, and 80% by 2050. The province subsequently adopted the Clean BC Roadmap to 2030, which provides guidance on emissions reduction efforts, including for local governments. This roadmap has also informed our own climate change efforts. As with the 2013 Climate Action and Energy Plan, public engagement was an important element of updating this document most recently. A live webinar session in July 2020 presented the climate action modeling results and hosted discussion on climate action in North Cowichan. A question and answer document followed this and was posted to the Place Speak Engagement website. A survey in February 2021 focused on climate action prioritization and land use decisions, and the Environmental Advisory Committee and Council also reviewed emission reduction actions and modeling outputs at various stages of the project. The Climate Action Energy Plan recognizes that we are facing a global problem and that any success in mitigating climate change will depend on actions at the international, national, and provincial level. This is recognized by Council, which passed the following resolution before adopting our updated plan. The resolution reads as follows. The municipality will play an important role in implementing the goals of the Climate Action and Energy Plan update. However, we cannot stress strongly enough that its ultimate success will depend on actions from the senior levels of government. If recent history has taught us anything, there is a real risk that our federal and provincial leaders could backtrack on their climate change commitments and fall well short of our greenhouse gas reduction targets. If decision makers in Ottawa and Victoria do not follow through on their environmental promises, then North Cowichan will be unable to meet its target of reducing emissions by 80% by 2050. While recognizing this is a global problem, we have nevertheless made a commitment at this table to do our part in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. like many other communities across BC, Canada, and the world. Obviously, we are too small to solve this problem on our own. However, many of us would argue that if we expect action from the senior levels of government and on the international stage, then it's important that we set the right example here at home. That is the collective position of this council and of this municipality. For any members of council who have a different view on the matter, I would suggest bringing forward a notice of motion to repeal or revise our climate action and energy plan. Unless that happens, our climate change commitments are the official policy of this municipality, and the expectation is that members of council will not undermine these policies once we have debated and adopted them as a democratic body. Once a policy like the climate action and energy plan is updated, it's our place as council members to question our municipal staff on the science of climate change. Their job is to implement what we determine is a priority at this table, and right now that includes climate change mitigation. For any members of the public who may be in the gallery this evening and have a different view on the matter with regards to our climate change efforts, I'll say this. We live in a free and democratic society, and you're entitled to have your own opinion. However, the group of people you see sitting around the council table were elected by our residents last year to govern on their behalf. The majority of us here are committed to continuing North Cowichan's climate change efforts over the course of our term, and we're clear on that when we ran for office. We welcome your input, but if your goal for us is to totally abandon these initiatives, then I would suggest your best option is to try to elect a different council in the next election. That is the democratic process. I also want to take a moment to differentiate climate change mitigation from adaptation, which came up at the end of one of our most recent meetings. Mitigation refers to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. This is the focus of North Cowichan's climate action and energy plan. Mitigation typically involves switching from oil, gas, or coal to renewable energy sources or reducing one's energy consumption. Some would argue that we should not, as a municipality or even as a country, be focusing any of our efforts on mitigation owing to our small overall contributions to global greenhouse gas emissions. Adaptation, on the other hand, means adjusting to the impacts of actual or expected future climate, including extreme heat, water shortages and drought, flooding, fires, sea level rise. Whatever one's view may be of the science of climate change, I would think we can all agree that in recent years we have seen major changes in our climate, including more frequent and extreme weather events. We saw this over the past summer with the wildfires and the severe droughts across BC, and we saw it with the heat dome in the atmospheric river in 2021. We can either sit back and watch these changes unfold in our community with major impacts to our homes, businesses, industry, and public infrastructure, or we can take steps to strengthen our resilience to climate change, whether that's undertaking work to reduce the risk of wildfires on Mount Zuhalem, or working with the province and the Halalt Nation to remove sediment from the Chemainus River to reduce the risk of flooding to the nearby properties. North Cowichan is in the process of developing its own climate adaptation strategy, which will include recommendations on how we can adapt to these more frequent and extreme weather events, whether we're talking about wildfires, drought, or floods. The climate adaptation strategy will be done in 3 phases. Phase 1 is understanding the local context and primary concerns. Phase 2 is conducting a vulnerability and risk assessment. And Phase 3 includes developing the actual climate change adaptation strategy. Last week at our Committee of the Whole meeting, we reviewed an initial report for Phase 1 of this project, which included a summary of engagement with the public and First Nations, interviews with interested parties, and a review of the background literature. Any recommendations for adapting to climate change won't come until Phase 3 of this report, likely sometime in 2024. To be clear, this work of developing a climate adaptation strategy is a priority established by Council and is outlined in our strategic plan. Similar to my comments about the climate action and energy plan, if there is any member of Council who does not believe this work related to adaptation is a priority, then they are free to bring forward a notice of motion to abandon this project. Until then, we will be moving forward with our climate adaptation strategy. And that concludes my mayor's report. Thank you.